So there's in our local newspaper, our local regional newspaper here in Ireland for the Western people, a priest here called Brendan Hoban. He's a retired priest of this parish where I live in Ballina, County Mayo. He writes a column in the Western People, and the column this week was "Without priests, we won't have a church." Fully agree with him. Absolutely, fully agree with him. And many people have been asking, what did I think of this article? So, this is the article. I'm going to read it out to you, and you can download it online from the Western People. But I just thought people would be asking, what do you think of this? So I said, well, look, I'm going to have a read through it, and I'll give my commentary on this article. So the title of it is "Without Priests, We Won't Have a Church" by Father Brendan Hoban. If you want to write Father Brendan Hoban, it's brendanhoban96@gmail.com. I better get my glasses on here. So the story, the article is, "This is the story of John Rowland, a native, like myself, of Ballycastle in North Mayo. Born in 1906, John was at school with my father, first in Ballycastle National School on the Glen border, and later as boarders in St. Muredach's College, right beside me here in Ballina. Later again, like my uncles Tom Michael and John and my aunt Baby, John Rowland emigrated to America. A glittering academic career followed him. John was awarded the Fellowship of the Sorbonne in Paris, one of the great universities of Europe, where he was conferred with the doctorate in physics, and he taught in College of Illinois, later lecturing in Notre Dame, one of the leading universities in the US. John also had a glittering career and apparently a happy life. For 33 years, he worked for the Ford Mayer Company in Detroit and was a test pilot during the Second World War, meeting the great and the good like US President Franklin D. Roosevelt, Charles de Gaulle of France, and Charles Lindbergh, the famous pilot. John's first wife died in 1962. He remarried in 1965 and he died in 1990. He was survived by 5 children, 2 stepdaughters and 2 stepsons, 23 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, a full life. But there's more. I didn't mention that John, immediately after he went to America, entered a seminary to study for the priesthood. He was ordained for the Diocese of Rockford, Illinois in 1929 and subsequently left the active ministry. With a loss to Rockford and a loss to the Catholic Church, if he had remained in the priesthood, his ability and intelligence might have brought promotion to the rank of bishop or even cardinal, and the Catholic Church might have benefited hugely from the contribution of an able and talented man. Or if his family had been able to afford the Maynooth fees and he was ordained for his native diocese, what might have contributed to the Catholic Church in Killala and further afield. Either way, the Catholic Church lost out to an extremely talented man whose lavish talents and abilities were lost. While I'm not privy to John Rowland's motivations in leaving the priesthood, what's clear is that his decision is one he has shared with thousands and thousands of Catholic priests in recent years. What an extraordinarily cumulative loss it has been. I thought of John Rowland when I read recently comments of Archbishop Michael Neary of Tuam on the decline in the number of priests in Tuam in the last 25 years. The key message was that from 1996 to 2021, Tuam had lost 60% of their priests. While it isn't clear why 72 priests left diocese over a quarter of a century, we can presume that there were a number of reasons. Some left the priesthood, others moved to another diocese, some were refused an opportunity to minister because of perceived failure, and others, of course, had died. Tuam's story, albeit unusual, in that the decline in priest number has been so publicly named, is the story of every diocese in Ireland. Also at the same, it's also the same in that no apparent effort has been made to ask what seems to be the obvious question: why have so many priests walked away from the priesthood? And I'll come back to that question at the end. If a diocese like Tuam lost 60% of its priests in 25 years, why are questions not being asked as to the reason why? Exactly, I'm totally with you, Father Brendan. Why are we not asking these questions? And why is it taken for granted in dioceses that priests walk away when the loss in terms of personnel, talent and application has accumulatively been so devastating? While bishops have ritually repeated the recent episcopal wisdom that society or secularization or loss of faith are the reasons for the very perceived failure, the more obvious reason for the crisis in the Catholic priesthood is the refusal to reimagine priesthood in a very different world. It is obvious to everyone that priests are now an endangered species in Ireland. Within 20 years, there will be few priests left, and as most priests now are 60 years plus, most of those still alive in 2041 will be in their 80s. It is also obvious to most people, to most priests, I suspect, to most bishops, that the main and obvious reason why so many priests have walked away, and there are so few vocations now, is the celibacy requirement for the priesthood. Catholic parents committed to their faith and their church will tell anyone who cares to listen that they don't want their sons to become priests because of the life the priest to them seems to be too bereft, lonely, isolated. A different priesthood should be significantly more attractive to them and their sons and daughters. Because Father Hoban wants the priesthood expanded to women. Particularly, it can be argued that the authorities in the Catholic Church have effectively decided that the future of the Church can be placed at risk rather than make celibacy a choice rather than an obligation for the priesthood. Because, as we know, the Eucharist, Mass, is at the heart of the Catholic faith. If we haven't enough priests, we won't have Mass for our people, and if we haven't the Mass, we won't have a Catholic Church. What part of the last sentence does anyone not understand? Pope Francis's solution seems to be that if people are brought into effective participation in the governance of the Church, eventually pennies will begin to drop. But the real question, whether the word eventually will mean too late, the difficult truth is that we cannot afford to keep losing the John Edwards. So that was the article of Father Brendan Hoban in the Western People, and to be honest, I agree with most of what he's saying. We need to ask questions. Why is it happening? Why are so many priests asking? But I think I can bring a little bit of perspective, Father, to your article, because I did put myself forward for the priesthood, and very enthusiastically, still love my faith. Went to seminary, was 9 years in a seminary, and never felt. I felt that God saying, no, you're not called to this at the end. I loved the idea. I loved my faith. I loved the Eucharist. But, there was always that call in the back of my mind saying, well, Robert, I don't want you here. I want you elsewhere. And so I followed that call out of the seminary. I would loved to have been a priest. I think I would make a good married priest, simply speaking. But let's be real here, Father. Let's just come back down to reality here. Has the married priesthood saved the Anglican Church? No, it hasn't. It's in fact the woke nature that's arrived into the Anglican communion has practically destroyed their faith. If you think Catholicism is in free fall in Ireland, just look Look at where Anglicanism is going. And let's argue, let's say tomorrow the Pope says to the Irish bishops, let's give you a special dispensation. Let's experiment here and give you a special dispensation to ordain married priests in Ireland. Okay? So now we have the dispensation to ordain married priests in Ireland. I don't know if many people have thought a little bit about, okay, what would married priesthood effectively entail? Okay? Because you're going to then, let's put two vocations together, marriage and the priesthood into one. And these two vocations require two different ways of dealing with married life and priesthood life. As a married man is supposed to be on call every night to go out and give the last rites. Should the married priest get a higher wage? Should he get access to church property? What happens if a married priest dies suddenly and his wife and children have to be cared for? Those costs have to be accounted for. I don't know if many people understand, but really here in Ireland, if you want to live if you want to have a normal family life in Ireland and support your kids, you do need a living wage that's substantial. I'm not badly paid, but I can tell you that the church would never give me the wage that I have in the private sector. Simply wouldn't happen. There isn't anybody in the church earning a wage. There isn't anyone in the Catholic Church, any priest or any bishop earning the wage that you would get in the private sector, or the ability to negotiate your wage in the private sector. And taxation being what it is in Ireland, that's simply it. The economics are the economics. And then there's the human aspect of a married priest. I don't know if priests, if you're called to give baptisms, funerals, weddings, daily mass, and attend to the whole parish life, this requires time, especially weekends requires time. It simply does. It's a vocation. It's a sacrifice. It's offering yourself to the church. And the vocation of a married priest requires the consent of the wife. If you look in the Orthodox Church, if a man wants to become a priest, he has to be married. If he wants to be a married priest, he first has to be married, and from there he can go on and be ordained. But the consent of the wife is needed, and the wife is part of his ministry. She has to consent to it. So, you can't have on the one hand a Catholic priest, on the other hand, say a wife that doesn't support the faith. There's a lot of complexity in the married priesthood. And if you go to the East, and I've been to the Orthodox Church, a married priesthood does not solve everything. If tomorrow, I guarantee you, if tomorrow the Catholic Church says now we can have married priests in Ireland, you would not have a stampede of married men wanting to be priests. The priesthood is a vocation. It's not a job. And this is what has been forgotten in the church. And the question needs to be asked. I can answer some of these questions. What has happened? We have, you give the importance of the Eucharist. Our children don't know what the Eucharist is. We have not taught the faith. Our Catholic primary schools, what level of faith are we teaching? We sit the Eucharist in the education of our kids alongside maths, physics, Irish, or whatever. We've brought the Eucharist and the faith down to the level of an intellectual subject that's semi-infantile, because, where is, the questions need to be asked, why are we not bringing faith formation back into the church? Where are the prayer groups? Where are we forming men in prayer? I go to a men's prayer group. It's not in this diocese. It's in the Midlands. And there are many young men that come to that prayer group. And from that prayer group, there have been vocations. There have been men that have come. And we pray for those men that are currently in the seminary. We support them. We will support their ministry if they become priests. That is what's needed, because this priesthood is a call to sacrifice. It's not a call for me to be comfortable in a married life and to have all of the commodities around me. So I have the priesthood, I have my wife, and I have my children, and I have my car, and I'll have my iPhone, my computer, my holiday, and I'll have my ministry. And I'll have, that's my career. Is the priesthood now supposed to be a Catholic career in the church? Or is it a call to service? As much as I would love to be a Catholic priest, and I think, I'd make a good job at it if I was. I can see now where I am in life that I would be so divided in my time, trying to minister to both vocations. Our wife and our children and our family deserve our time and dedication and our efforts, and so does the priesthood. That there is some room in the Catholic Church for a married priesthood for a man who has no financial commitments, who has raised his family, who has no other commitments, and is willing to give his time to the church. Say if you are retired or something like that, that's something that the church might want to explore. But I think we really, really do miss the centrality of what the priesthood is, the call to sacrifice. And if you go to the Orthodox Church, I have friends there, and I've been to the East, been to Mount Athos, and you see the life of a celibate priest in the Orthodox tradition. The deep mystical, history of that calling. The monks on Mount Athos, the Orthodox monk who is celibate, these priests who people go and search out for. You often hear in the Orthodox, they don't go to confession with a married priest, but they will go to confession with an Orthodox monk, a celibate monk. They see that this man has given himself over entirely to his vocation, and that's what they see, the power of that witness. So I'm sick of this. We're dying, and let's we're the prophets of doom. I'm sick of the prophets of doom in Ireland. I'm sorry, the Catholic Priests Association, what heritage, what have you left? How many prayer groups have you left? How many hours of adoration have you offered? How many rosaries have you led? Where are the groups you are leaving behind? You leave no legacy here. What is your legacy? How many priests have you mentored? How many men have you mentored towards the priesthood? I ask. And people will ask, why are we being the prophets of doom about the faith? The faith is very much alive in Ireland. And there are men going forward for the priesthood. Yes, you might look at Maynooth this year and say, oh, well, there's only 4 men that have gone to Maynooth. And, it is what it is. I mean, the formation that we had in Maynooth, what can we expect? But there are 10 men who've gone to traditional seminaries, who've gone abroad to traditional seminaries. The youngest priest in the Diocese of Tuam has joined a traditional movement. Because men need fraternity and support in the priesthood. And you're right to call out, who would want their son to live a lonely life in a parish, in a house on its own? I agree with you. That's not a life for a priest. That's not a life for a priest. Men need support. Priests need support. Priests need mentorship. Priests need good spiritual directors. Priests need to be shown what this spiritual battle really is. So, I agree with much what you've written, but the answer to your questions is not the married priesthood. It isn't. It simply isn't. You're talking about your uncle there that went on to accomplish so many things. He would not have done those things if he was a priest. You can only dedicate so much of your life to certain things. And we need to understand, if the Eucharist is so incredible, the source, so much and centre of our faith, if the faith means something to us and we want to give this to our kids, then we have to decide, okay, well, what do you want to do? When Christ called his disciples, they didn't turn around and say, sorry, Jesus, wait a second, I'm just going to go and get my wife and kids and my mother-in-law. Are you okay? I'll just tag them. Christ did call for a slightly radically different way of following him, which was leaving everything. And to say otherwise, really, we're really cheapening the gospel. We're cheapening Christ's message. The priesthood is not easy. The priesthood is not easy. And that's probably one of the reasons why it's been dumbed down so much in the last 50 years, that people don't see it as a challenge. What man would give himself to the priesthood that's been painted by the Catholic Priests Association? What man, honestly, think about it. Today, what man who loves his faith, who knows his faith, would enter the priesthood with the vision that has been painted by the Catholic Priests Association? They wouldn't. They wouldn't. I wouldn't. I would never send my kids to that. We look back in 2018, during the abortion referendum, we can't be dogmatic about the child in the womb. We don't. Where are we going with this? Honestly speaking, what do you think is the solution here? We have to go back to some of the basics in our Catholic faith, which is prayer, the living encounter with Christ in the Eucharist. Once you encounter Christ in the Eucharist, the living person of our Lord Jesus Christ, a person who you can talk to and who you are guided towards in a good spiritual path, then you will be captivated by him. And you won't be thinking about, I could have done this and that and the other. If you are captivated by Christ, he will lead you forward. I was just listening the other day to a talk that former sister Martina Purdy gave, and she was wholeheartedly given over to that mission of being a sister, and that was what she wanted to do. But due to the Vatican changing the regulations on how convents could go forward viably, she had to leave that convent. But she entrusted herself to that mission. Lord, lead me forward. Whatever you want, whatever you want me to do, I will do. And I just thought she's an amazing example of a woman of faith in Ireland. She is really showing her deep faith in Christ. And the priesthood is the exact same. It has to be centered deeply in Christ so that he is our rock. For all Catholics. For all Catholics, really. If we're going to be Catholic, we have to center ourselves in the faith. So, the questions that you're asking here, they can be solved if we actually stood up and were examples of the gospel of faith and showed people how passionately we feel about our Lord Jesus Christ and his mother. How passionately we feel about the faith, that it is something real, profoundly life-changing, something so incredibly different that there's nothing in this world that can offer what we have. People will be captivated. And it happens all over the world. The Vocations cry. There are many dioceses in the United States with Catholic populations a lot smaller than Ireland who are getting a lot more vocations. Not traditional, and they're not traditional seminaries. Because there are men who have been captivated by their mission as a priest. And once you've been captivated by that, you can transmit it. And it takes a person to really, dig into their faith, to study, to love it, to live a life of grace, to offer themselves to be. And what men find captivating about the priesthood is authenticity of men who live the faith, that they can see it. Communities of men that, when you go there, I think of the Franciscans of the Renewal, the priests of the Home of the Mother, these are men that live in community. They give great witness to the faith. They give great witness to the priesthood. That will renew the church, because it'll ask the questions. It'll challenge people. But we need to open doors to the next generation. We need to teach them the faith. We don't teach the faith anymore. It hasn't been taught for since I was a child. And we're wondering why nobody believes in the Eucharist. Father, look around Ballina, look around Go into St. Muredach's in a Sunday Mass at 12:30. How many people under the age of 30 are actually going to Mass? Where are all the kids who are going to get their first communion and confirmation next year? They're not even, their families are not even engaged enough to bring them to Mass on a Sunday. You know, and then we're wondering where the vocation's gone. Well, if we haven't offered that encounter with Christ to our children, how do you think a married priesthood is going to resolve anything? Are you just going to replace the status quo with married priests? Do you think married priests are going to have any more engagement in the church than celibate priests, or are going to do things differently? You know, this is a kind of a fatalism that we have. You know, I think a celibate priest, having that time for prayer that oftentimes we don't have in married life, because you're bringing kids to here, you're bringing them to this. You know, are married priests then supposed to step away from their families and not be as engaged as non? Do you know what I mean? Because the hours that a priest has to work are not the most sociable hours. It's not the solution. You know, the solution is a powerful witness to the faith, Father. And I challenge you, and I challenge the Catholic Priests Association, come out and show us, you know, where is your witness to the faith? Where is the witness to the faith? Where is your pilgrimage leading us to, you know, in prayer? Where is that? Where are the call to adoration to pray for priests? You know, I grew up in Navan, in my early years, and I lived beside a man called John Howard, and he's a powerful man of adoration, and he always prays for vocations. And Navan, you know, they have great priests. You know, they've always had vocations, but it requires, you know, to open a man's heart to that vocation, you need prayer. You need the witness of prayer. You know, and it's amazing to see Father Tom Doherty here in Ballina, great man, very saintly man, you know, vocations director. How many vocations have come since he's been made vocations director? You know, that's a powerful witness of a man's ability to dig into prayer and to show witness to the faith. You know, I mean, Killala does have more vocations than the Diocese of Dublin, which doesn't even have a single person in formation at any level at the moment. So, you know, we're not dead yet here. Okay, what's required is that witness of prayer, that deep witness of prayer. And you know, this is my reflection. It's not very organized, as you can see, but I think you can see how passionately I feel about this subject. You know, we should not be the prophets of doom. We should be the prophet. We should be the heralds of the gospel. We should be, you know, living that faith. You know, it means something to us. It's amazing. That encounter with Christ is amazing. So come on, Father, be optimistic. Lead men to prayer. You know, this is something powerful in the church. The gospel is something powerful. If it was powerful, if it was the everything of, you know, of our life, things would be very different in the church. But we don't have that witness. We don't, and we haven't given that formation. And now we're wondering why we're drowning. We need to throw a lifeboat to people and to teach them and show them the path of the faith, the path of the gospel, the power of the Eucharist, the power of the Rosary. These things will transform the church, and I can see them transforming the church because I know how they change lives. Just my reflection, Father, and God bless, and yeah, I hope, you know, we can see a renewal in the church, but I don't agree at all with your conclusions. I don't think the married priesthood is going to suddenly reform the church or save us. It simply won't. You know, the priesthood is a specific vocation and it needs to be taken extremely seriously. And we just can't expect to think that, you know, following the Anglican tradition down what they've done is going to save us. It won't. You know, it won't. And if you ask the Orthodox, they will even say, or the Greek Catholics that also have married priests, it's not the be all and end all of saving the faith. It's a specific vocation. And I just don't see it. I just don't see the married priesthood being, if it was offered tomorrow, that you would have a rush of people. Once they say, oh, the salary is what? Oh, salary is what, 30,000, and I don't have weekends off, and I'm on call at nights. I've no overtime. What? And the wife says, no, don't go for that. It's very simplistic to say that the married priesthood would save people. It won't. It won't save the faith in Ireland. What will save the faith is a return to the faith. Giving witness to the faith. If priests showed how much they loved the vocation, that it was the most amazing thing that they did in their life, that would show people. That would drive the questions. St. Francis, had that great witness, and that drove a lot of people to follow him because they saw in him, a man who was given over to a mission. We need priests who are men of mission in Ireland, and I just think that's what we're missing here, are more men of mission. Thank you. Bye.